Namaste and welcome to the Bharatvaarta Weekly. Thank you so much for joining us this Sunday morning. I have with me Nirav Kanodra and I'm Roshan Karyappa to run you through the news and events of the week that was. It was quite an eventful week, I should say. Hey Nirav, how's it going?
Yeah, all good, all good. As you mentioned, it's like quite an interesting and eventful week. So let's move on to talk about the events.
Yeah. No, I think Bangalore has been raining cats and dogs and all other feral cousins, over the last few days, right? It's been eventful weather-wise also. Uh, we have a lot to talk about this weekly. There were a record number of MPs suspended from the Rajya Sabha. There was also a really amazing 5G blockbuster 5G telecom spectrum auction. Then India won a bunch of medals at the Commonwealth Games. Defense Ministry approved arms procurement worth about 28,000 crores. And then, in something that could have larger consequences, not just geopolitically, but from a scientific perspective, Russia has quit the International Space Station, or rather, plans to quit by 2024. All of this and more on this weekly. Before we begin, I request you to rate and review us on your favorite platforms. It helps more people to discover Bharatvarta. Certainly, we put in a lot of effort to make this high quality content for you, and it would be really helpful if you could just take 10 seconds, 20 seconds to just find us on whatever platform you listen to and just rate and review us, right? All right. Uh, like always, we'll talk about the episode that we put out last week. This was long due. It was a conversation with Mr. Fayaz Ahmed Faizi, who's an activist from the Pasmanda Muslim community, which is been neglected. And he spoke about the caste structure within the Muslim community in India itself, and what is required from a social development perspective for these folks, right? Again, pretty interesting sort of an episode. We're not really aware of all of the social strata in some of these different faiths, and yeah, I mean, he spoke really well. Do check it out. It's something to really be informed about. All right. A total of 23 MPs have been suspended from the House over the week. This is the highest number of Rajya Sabha MPs suspended in a single session. It began on Tuesday, where 19 MPs from parties such as TMC, DMK, TRS, and CPI were suspended. As the week progressed, three more MPs from AAP were suspended as well as an independent. Since the session began on July 18th, the opposition has been demanding a discussion on issues such as inflation, GST, on essential items, and LPG price hike. Nirav, we kind of expected that there will be some contentious issues in this session, but it seems like a horrible waste of taxpayer money for people to for our MPs and representatives to stall procedures like this, right?
Yeah, so I think, see, there is a time and place and there is a way of protesting. Second thing is, if you really be realistic, I think inflation is a global problem. You had supply chain stalled globally. China is still in lockdowns. You have a Russia-Ukraine war going. So if you are raising certain prices, that is because of international prices also rising, right? And we are like a government which runs a budget deficit. We don't have the luxury of like having a huge sovereign wealth fund with a lot of savings, and we're not an entitlement driven country, right? So while the problems exist, that is true. We've had 2 years where growth was much slower. Now, while it is picking up, right? Uh, GST collections are good, but probably compared to all the outlays, compared to lesser income tax collection from corporates and like individuals as well, uh, you are you have to raise GST on certain items. Now you have to fund the deficit somewhere, right? So see, that is a problem. The opposition does not have any solutions. There's no real debate. They are not proposing an alternative or a bill. All they are doing here is creating a ruckus. Probably that's also a reflection of Indian society, sadly, where like these kind of media headlines or these kind of show of strength, like how you have all these rasta rokos or buns, that is seen in a better light versus trying to debate it out, propose alternatives. As a Rajya Sabha MP, you could propose a bill. Whether it gets passed or no is a separate thing. So I think uh, that's that's a sad reflection of like our parliamentary politics. And given that they've been suspended, that is showing some sort of a signal, right? It's just following parliamentary conduct. The speaker of the upper house and the they have the option. We do not want unruly behavior in our society. So I think it's a very sad thing. It is what it is. All these suspensions are only for a week. So it's not as if, oh, it's death of democracy, or they are also following the procedure, irrespective of whichever side you're supporting politically, right? I think it is just important that all members of parliament, members of Vidhan Sabha, etc., they are all trying to have like good behavior. And there are problems the country has, so try and work constructively instead of just like being uh, blockading anything or blockading any kind of discussion, etc. And also offer solutions. See, like LPG price is higher because global gas prices are higher. It is what it is. We can't do much about it, right? Otherwise, the taxpayer has to pay for the subsidy, right? So, do you want to rob Peter to pay Paul? Already the taxpayers are stretched, so maybe certain subsidies need to go. So, I just think it's a sad thing. Hopefully, this week of suspension, etc., goes off, and like later the parliament just resumes its business. And tactically, I don't know if there is a bill pending or something, but this can also be a thing where now it's easier for the ruling party to pass a bill when like some MPs are suspended, right? But you don't want that. You don't want that. You want it to be passed in a proper way where everybody is present and all these things are like due procedure. Everything is done properly. So it's just very sad piece of news
Yeah.
this week.
No, I remember what you said, I think a few weeklies ago. Today's shops are tomorrow's taxes, right? So I think, as the proverb goes, right, no escaping death and taxes. And it's better, it's more prudent that we bite the bullet sooner than later, right? Especially with the macro environment. You mentioned crude at all-time high prices and so on. Um, there should always be an ebb and flow in politics. I mean, there should always be some friction, and I think that friction should be between different ideas and different solutions to the problem. But simply like talking about a problem which of course has a lot of constraints from a macro perspective as well, right? I mean, is doesn't really serve anyone. And hopefully there's some bipartisan support to to some good economics at least, right, going forward. Moving on, in more positive news, the Defense Ministry has approved arms procurement proposals worth 28,732 crores. The procurement proposals were cleared by the Defense Acquisition Council, headed by Raksha Mantri, Mr. Rajnath Singh. The procurement includes swarm drones and close quarter battle carbines to boost the combat prowess of the armed forces. In order to enhance the security in the coastal region of our country, DAC has also approved the proposal of procurement of 14 fast patrol vessels, FPVs, for the Indian Coast Guard. I think this is a fantastic development. In general, I think the indigenization of the arms procurement and defense supplies and so on is long due, and it's something that's long pending as well, right? For a country which spends, I don't know what it is, 76-77 billion dollars on defense every year, one of the major arms importers. We really have to make sure that this is indigenized, or at least there's a plan for indigenized in a phased manner, right? I think the Defense Acquisition Council also was set up couple of years back when the Prime Minister gave this call for Atmanirbharta, and they have these various modes, right? I mean, very thoughtfully designed by Indian, right? Indian IDDM, which is designed and developed here itself and manufactured. Then they have Buy Indian, Buy and Make Indian, Buy Global, Manufacture in India, and so on. They understand that we won't have the capacity, the capability to kind of manufacture all of these equipment right away, and so they have these various categories, right? I really like the buy global, make in India, feature as well, right? Which is that, hey, I mean, if we are procuring, from Russia or from Israel or wherever, right, those global companies should definitely set up manufacturing facilities in India. There should be some kind of an IP transfer. Maybe the spares and supplies should be, locally sort of. You should develop a local ecosystem to kind of support these and so on, right? And it's long due, right? I mean, you wonder some of these things, why it hasn't happened, right? I mean, we still have this very archaic thinking in terms of some of these things, and I think I'm really glad that, last couple of years at least, we've been um, forced to do differently. We see that the MiG-21, for example, right? I mean, often they're called flying coffins. A record number of them have crashed, right? I mean, I was just reading about it. Even I think last week or a week before, I mean, it crashed, unfortunately, killing two pilots. Um, and there is no alternative, right? I mean, the Tejas that we have, will not cover for all of the required number of regiments and so on. While I don't believe that tomorrow again, we'll start manufacturing these high tech, planes or helicopters and equipment and everything, and all of it will be 100% Indian. But I think just a plan in place to phase this out, I think, is a bare minimum. So I think the total defense procurement was around 76,000 crores or something, that was outlaid in June of this year, right? And there are amazing startups and companies, building stuff, right? I mean, I remember speaking to Ankit of Idea Forge on a different podcast some time back, and they supply to the defense ministry. They work with the Survey of India and so on. And there are similarly other, very good startups as well. Ara One Man Systems is another one that I can think of, manufacturing very, very high quality drones. And considering that the future of, war and so on is going to be like high tech, cyber, drones, all of that. We have plenty of talent in India on this front, right? And just with a little bit of encouragement, I think every dorm room in, IIT Bombay, IIT Madras, or elsewhere could turn into like fantastic incubators for, for all of the equipment that we need, I feel.
No, totally agree. Also, what this does is you've got a glide path of like increasing indigenization. This allows two, three things, right? Allows corporates to say that there is this big budget which is being spent. So if you are manufacturing other equipment or like other heavy equipment for like refineries or whatever else, you will have a separate like a business unit which makes defense equipment, right? So people can do capex, gives you visibility. So that is also very important, that you're not going to like suddenly turn around and say, okay, this didn't work out, because a lot of these things you need to think like 5 years and 10 years and those
Yeah,
kind
for
of
sure.
ways. Also, like as you mentioned, right, like talent. Like if you have talent in design, if you have talent in like manufacturing and then scale, because what this does is that the money which is spent is recirculated within your own economy versus
Correct.
money leaving the country, right? So, and to be fair, in case of war or in case of an emergency, you need to be resilient. The global geopolitical landscape is changing, and we cannot be too reliant on any one party. You see how like Russia has been ostracized and all of that all of a sudden, right? And so you don't want that. So absolutely, it is a very good thing, and it's also realistic that yes, we cannot manufacture
Yeah.
everything. So whatever we can, we do that. Build partnerships, get IP transfer, and glide paths for higher indigenization.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so Hemang Palan says JVs with established manufacturers is the way to partner in Make in India for quick results. I think we definitely agree with that. Yeah. Moving on, the much awaited 5G telecom spectrum auctions kicked off on Tuesday. The government received bids totaling around 1.45 lakh crore in four rounds of bidding on the first day, breaking the previous record of 1.09 lakh crore in the 2015 auction. Billionaire Mukesh Ambani's Reliance Jio, Sunil Mittal led Bharti Airtel, Vodafone Idea, and a unit of Gautam Adani's flagship Adani Enterprises are in the race for the 5G spectrum. The 700 megahertz band saw active participation this time, and according to sources, there was a bidding of around 40% of the total spectrum on sale on the first day. Nirav, this is blockbuster stuff, right? I mean, we've been awaiting this for a while now, and just given what has happened over the last 4 or 5 years with the whole geo revolution and everything, I can't really wait to see what happens with this 5G revolution.
No, absolutely. I think like what this does is so 5G kind of makes all your other devices connected. Like your GPS thing is like up to like a few feet, right? A little more accuracy. I think not just basically one is on the backbone, which is set up, and you laid the pipes, and all the amazing tech startups and all of those things which can come on, right? In things which we probably haven't imagined, right? You wouldn't have imagined like a what do you say, like a panwala or a nariyal pani wala, like a street side vendors accepting digital payments just like 7 8 years ago, right? So I think uh, this is quite nice, quite mind blowing. Also tells you that the big corporates are willing to invest, the big groups are putting in money, and as you see, like there's a big difference here, that earlier auctions, uh, when you had like a lot of foreign players, right? You had like Vodafones, and like earlier was Hutchinson Whampoa. This is like very early. So that time we felt that
Well,
Indian,
I remember
yeah,
hearing Etisalat as well, right?
yes, exactly. And at that time, what we felt was Indian groups did not have uh, money to like do capex or invest. Uh, so it's also heartening to see this, that this is also all domestic, because second thing is probably you could have like geopolitical security issues as well, with like foreign players controlling your parts of your spectrum. And second thing is, with like the 5G rollout, right? Apart from the better consumer experience, I think there's a huge opportunity for all your telecom equipment manufacturers and the whole supply chain regarding that as well, right? India is doing a bit even on the semiconductor side. So all of these things, because once you have like a nice 5G network, a lot of the devices will need to get upgraded, right? And obviously you'll see people at the top, the richer people upgrading their phones to 5G or like other devices, but soon it'll trickle down. So I think that's another big opportunity as well. India is catching on the 5G bandwagon with rest of the world, and very heartening news.
Yeah. No, I think bandwidth will not be a constraint. Well, speed and low latency will kind of ensure that the kind of applications that we build going into the future with this, which is an infrastructure level development, will be pretty amazing, right? I mean, I can think of plenty on that front. Virtualization, for example, VR has been AR and VR has been the next big thing for like 15 years now, right? It's really imminent for us to start seeing some real world applications, whether it is in healthcare, learning, and so on, right? And especially, I mean, if this kind of bandwidth is available, in the length and breadth of the country, it can have such a massive payoff, right? I mean, it can have like second, third order effects that we can't even imagine. So yeah, exciting development on that front. Moving on, there are Russia says it will quit International Space Station after 2024. The head of Russia's space agency, Roscosmos, told President Vladimir Putin on Tuesday that the country would exit the ISS and focus on building its own space station. However, after this announcement, the nation's space officials have told NASA they expect to remain a part of the ISS at least until their own outpost is built in 2028. The move comes as Moscow and the West clash over the Kremlin's war in Ukraine and casts new doubt over the future of global collaboration in space. Well, I mean, uh, life comes full circle with this, right? I mean, if you look at 20, 30 years back, with the whole space race and the Cold War and everything, to what we have, or what we had after with the International Space Station, cooperation on a global scale, for to explore the frontiers of science. um, I mean, this kind of fishing, um, definitely hurts, but it was kind of expected as well, right? I mean, what do you expect when you sanction a country that way? And I don't know if Russia will stop sending cosmonauts to the ISS completely, or detach the components that they've contributed. And there's also this propulsion fuel and stuff that Russia provides, right? I'm not sure if they'll start doing that immediately, I think there might be a sort of a lag, but certainly they're intending to break away by 2024 at least, again in a very phased manner. Yeah, and this also impacts 11 or 12 other countries as well, Canada, Japan, and so on. And who knows? I mean, with Russia planning to build its own orbital station, we might see a newer development, right? But it's kind of interesting, right? I mean, this kind of geopolitics is also like, going into space right now, and in the next 20-30 years, maybe with some kind of a colonization of Mars, and what else, we don't know how this will play out, but definitely interesting times ahead, I should say.
Uh, Actually, basically, you say like kind of like after collapse of USSR in 1989 or like late 1980s, like we had like a big geopolitical shift, right? And now probably like 30 years later, uh, that time someone was saying that it is Francis Fukuyama, it's like end of history and everybody's going to cooperate and there's going to be peace forever. And now we are like in Cold War 2.0. There is like friction between China and US regarding technology and IP. There have been like some trade sanctions put on there. People want to like decouple from China. Then again, Europe wants to decouple from like dependency on Russian energy. Russia is finding new buyers for its energy exports. So we are kind of seeing these rifts occur everywhere, and so very interesting times. I think for India, which was like earlier traditionally non-aligned, but it's a very weak non-aligned country, and so that time like no one cared for it, so no one helped it out in like tough times as well. I would say like now India is a much like probably fifth, sixth biggest economy by GDP, like a powerful member in the G20. So I think this probably gives more opportunity as well if you can straddle both these spheres and try and do what is best for India, right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting times ahead. Probably all this leads to like higher inflation globally because earlier you had a lot of cooperation and a tight supply chain and everything was like done L1. If you have like duplication and like everybody plans for resilience, costs go up everywhere. So I think that is one thing which is going to be a side effect. So no matter how much the MPs protest, coming back to that point, I think this is like fracturing of the world. World War 2.0, higher inflation is here to stay.
Yeah. No, but I also see this as an opportunity right now. Instead of having to negotiate with just one person, right, you have to negotiate with like maybe two or three, which could also be an opportunity for you to get the best deal possible from an India perspective. In software, we often talk about bundling and unbundling of software, right? I mean, there are, if you look at cycles, periodically things come together and then things fissure. And similarly, I think on a global level, right, there is this globalization, deglobalization, and then re-globalization that happens. I suppose, right? So interesting times ahead. Um, in some fantastic news, India has already won 4 medals in the 2022 Commonwealth Games. Mirabai Chanu won the gold in the women's 49 kilogram weightlifting event, shattering Commonwealth's game records to win India's first gold. Bindya Rani Sorai Kabam grabbed a silver medal in the women's 55 kg weightlifting competition as well. Sanket Sargar claimed a silver in the men's 55 kg category, with his fellow lifter Guru Raja Pujari taking the bronze in men's 61 kilogram category. And just this morning, the Indian women's hockey team beat Wales 3-1, rising to the top of their pool with 6 points in a couple of matches. Wow, this is fantastic stuff. Yeah, I mean, we seem to be producing, amazing talent in terms of women's weightlifting and so on, right?
Yeah, so I think like women's weightlifting, women's boxing, which tells you how tough Indian women are. But jokes apart, I think what has happened is we've got this very good focus on which is like the Olympic gold quest, which has kind of like identified top performers and given them a lot of resources. It's a sad thing, Neeraj Chopra is not taking part in this Commonwealth Games because of the injury sustained at the previous athletics meet. But this is just like the start, and whichever events have chronologically been held earlier, we've won some medals. Mirabai Channu also has another opportunity for. I think there are two types of weightlifting: clean and jerk and snatch. So I think the first one she's got it, and So I think this is quite a heartening thing. Uh, we had like our best performance in Olympics uh, in Tokyo, and hopefully with this, we kind of like go ahead and do well at this games in Birmingham. Asian Games are supposed to be in Hangzhou in China. I don't know whether they're delayed or what's happening, but I think this kind of uh, steady wins and like progress that if Indian athletes make right at all these events increases participation in sport, increases people think of it as a career as well, and maybe this is like a moment where 1983 World Cup was for cricket, right, which kind of commercialized it, uh, kind of gave way. So I think if this happens in more spheres, it's fantastic. It's like absolutely great, and also it gives all Indians something to be happy and cheerful about.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, sport is something that develops over decades, right? I mean, you can't just produce another Neeraj Chopra or just another, Mirabai Chanu. It takes, maybe 10, 15 years of an ecosystem developing, and then you see the fruit of that, basically. So I'm really excited for, what's going to come up in the next 5, 10, 15 years, right? I mean, we're going to have plenty of Neeraj Chopras, perhaps, or Mirabai Chanus. Yeah, very interesting stuff. What do you make of some folks on Twitter, especially talking about the fact that we shouldn't be part of the Commonwealth anymore? Why do we have this sort of a colonial mindset and stuff?
Yeah, so uh, while it is okay, debatable, the thing is actually this Commonwealth Games is now an opportunity as well. Like to you look at like UK has like kind of divorced the EU and is looking for better relationship with the Commonwealth countries. And we had a whole podcast about India UK relationship with Sandeep Sharma. But if you think about it this way, that uh, these sporting events bring in closer ties, right? And probably UK needs a lot of Indian labor now that the Europeans will need like a visa, etc., to work in the UK. So now this is an opportunity. So yes, like if earlier this was done as a method of like UK as like the overlord and all these were like subordinate, I think the relationship is a lot more on equal terms now. So that's that. And second thing is, see, sports or sports events are like good fun events to watch. I think these athletics events could be a little more commercialized on TV, and like more people could watch, more people get entertained, and more people get inspired. So uh, if you say, just think of it as an Asian Games, or
Yeah.
think of it as Southeast Asian Games or SAARC Games or whatever, right? It's one group of people competing in something, and what's wrong with it?
Yeah. No, I think we don't have to be that insecure, right? I mean, we are a bigger economy than UK, for example,
Exactly,
right now,
exactly. Now the
right?
relationship is a lot more equal.
Yeah, exactly. And if and anytime there are tensions with Pakistan or etc., we say that we should not play cricket or something like that. I think the converse also is true, right? I mean, sports can actually bring countries and nations together, right? And so yeah, I mean, we could also use sports in a positive sense in that way, right? So yeah. All right. On that very positive note, we come to the end of the Bharatvaarta Weekly, the 102nd edition at that. Thank you again for being with us, keeping us company, and we hope this was useful, insightful to you, and perhaps even entertaining. We have a blockbuster episode with Harsh Madhusudan coming up next week. He talks about the state of the Indian economy. We were due to publish it this week, but we've been having a couple of problems with a few of the platforms, which is why, again, I mean, I want to reinstate that, please rate and review us on these platforms, that so that discoverability improves and people can find our content more easily. But hopefully, we should be past all of that, and we should put out this wonderful episode with Harsh this week. Again, it's a commentary on all things macro, how these things impact India and what's to come over the next a year, 18 months or so. And of course, I mean, he talks about the $5 trillion economy, and he actually believes that we could probably hit that goal sooner, right? So, all right, thank you guys. Thanks so much for joining. Stay safe, take care, and hope you have a wonderful week ahead.